So somehow I managed to blunder in the first move of the game. And I'm going to be showing you this game review of this new variant that I've been playing over the board with other people. If you are interested in this variant, feel free to subscribe to the channel as I'll be posting more game reviews in the future. But let's see how I can blunder this in one move.
You are watching John Chess TV.
Alright, so my friend Matt has the white pieces and I have the black pieces. The game begins with bishop g3. I respond with knight c5, as my idea is to eventually go here and to bring in the second knight to maybe give a double checkmate. Because if you've been following along, how checks work is that you can give checks during the beginning of the game, but they go into effect at move 5, and you can't recapture a piece currently before the first 5 moves of play. So my idea was to, okay, give a double check. That way he can't really respond to both checks at the same time. If you're a little confused, I put the rules down in the video description if you do want to read them. So that was my general idea, but after he played d4, I realized that I don't have enough tempo to really get my second knight into play. So I kind of hesitated here and backtracked, and I played the move knight c7. So I essentially undeveloped my knight, going down a tempo here, and that's essentially how I blundered. Is essentially I gave my opponent 2 free moves to do really whatever he wants, and I'm really back to the same starting position. So my idea failed. A better idea would have been to probably hop my knight in anyways, knowing that I don't have a tempo to get the second knight in, but I might have ideas with maybe bishop a5 looks pretty deadly, and it still applies the same double check technique that I was looking for in the first place. But otherwise, the game goes on and I put my knight back. Next, he does bishop b3, so developing his other bishop. Especially in this opening, you want to take into consideration that both rooks are being attacked by the enemy's bishop. So you'll see from the starting position here that this bishop was targeting this rook over here, so he puts his bishop there to block it. And that's why we made this rule, is because if you look at our previous video, really, you can't really do anything because all the pieces just get traded and there's a tempo up for white, so it just doesn't really work that well. So a very smart move by my opponent. He develops the bishop. I do something similar. I go to bishop b6, so I'm developing my second bishop, attacking his pawn, even though it's guarded by his queen here. But I'm starting to get my pieces into play now eventually. Next, he does c3, so this is going to be an important move to really solidify his pawn structure here. And you'll notice later in this video, the pawns really come into factor, which I'm kind of surprised, especially since they all start usually on the back rank, other than the queen and king pawn. So he plays c3 to solidify his center. And this is move 4, by the way. So this is the last move before captures and checks go into place. He also went c3 to prevent any shenanigans with bishop a5 check. He wanted to cover his king on this diagonal as well. So next I played d6. I can't really remember why, but that is my final move before going into checks and captures here. All right, so on move 5, my opponent goes bishop a4 check. And really the only way to cover this is to make an exchange with the rook. So I'll be down a rook because I can't really go here because he just takes and I'm forced to give up the queen really. So I have to take the bishop with the rook, and then he gives queen check here, and then the queens come off the board when we exchange. Because I mean, he's up in exchange, why not just trade down? And from here I'm pretty much cooked as is. But let's continue with the blunders. So after king takes, he does rook a4. So he moves his rook up. Then I do knight h5, because the reason behind this move is I didn't really want him to take my other rook. So at least putting something there to block him from taking my rook in the meantime, because when you're down material in chess, you don't really want to trade pieces. So I went there, even though knights on the rim are dim. It's really the only move that I thought was logical at the time. Then he does king f2, protecting his bishop. He thought about going f2 or maybe sliding the bishop back, but I think he thought that was too passive, and he's braver than I am by going to king f2 here. Next, I played g6, protecting my knight and possibly opening up lines to get my rook out. But after this, he goes knight f4, extinguishing those ideas, as I'm pretty much forced to take at this point, or at least give up an exchange. So I go knight f6, and then he takes my rook anyways, and then my knight is on h7. So this is a very depressing position for black here. And after this, he goes e3. So once again, solidifying his center. He has a nice strong pawn structure in the center. That'll come into play later on. Then I go g5 here, so I push, attack his knight. Knight drops back to e2 here, and then I go bishop d5, attacking his pawn, but once again, he can probably trap it, so he can probably go there And same thing here, my opponent can't really capture on a8 because bishop here really traps it, and it's never really getting out. But my opponent goes h3, and I do knight f6, trying to get it back into the game here. My opponent plays c4, so pushing his pawns. I go bishop c6, trying to keep it still on that long diagonal. Then my opponent goes rook a3 here. Then I give a check, so knight e4 check here. My opponent goes to e1. I give another check. Doesn't really lead to anything. My opponent eventually went to king d1, and then I go e6. My opponent goes bishop e1, trying to trade off the bishops. I go bishop b6. This is when my opponent wants to go crazy loco, so he plays f3 here. I go knight f6, and then he plays g2. Then I play h6, trying to get my pawns into play. Then he goes knight d3 here. Then I go d5. Then he goes c5, bishop c7, and now rook takes a8, so that's now possible. Then I go knight d8. He retreats, so hit and run by my opponent. Goes back to rook a3. Then I go knight f7, because why not at this point? Then my opponent goes knight c3, and then I go e5, which I believe is a blunder, because my opponent said, oh really? And that's how I know I'm cooked. So my opponent played b3 here, then I do e4. My opponent plays knight b4. Then I go b7, protecting my bishop. But it doesn't really matter because after f takes e, d takes e, there's d5. And now my bishop is trapped. So bishop takes, knight takes, and a big trade happens in the center. I go knight e5, he takes my bishop, king takes, then he pins my knight to my king, so he eventually gets all the pieces off the board and is up a full rook. I go f6, he takes, I take. He goes rook a2, I go king c6 here, bringing up my king, because when you have nothing else to do, it's best to just run the king and see what happens. He plays b4, defending his pawn. I go king b5 here, trying to get my king in. He goes rook b2, then I go king c4, he goes king d2, and then I go c6. And at this point, my opponent really wanted to turn on the engine to see how much he was winning, so he played a2 here. And at this point, you can see white is up about, oh, actually it's mate in 18. So there you go. Then I go h5. Not a lot I can do at this point. He goes rook b1. I go g4. Now this is a clever maneuver that my opponent did that I found really enlightening, even just in the endgame, as an endgame tactic maybe. He goes rook f1, baiting me to take on b4. Because once I take, he can give a check. Then if I take this pawn, he's cutting off my king on this file, so I can never get to the a2 pawn. So that's what happened. I took here, he came back to give a check. I didn't really know what was going on, so I said, what is this? And then I took, and then I realized after he takes here, there's no way that I can get to his pawn, because there's no other pieces I have that can really get to it. So really nice play by my opponent. Something I'll remember if I ever end in an endgame like this. But after rook takes, I take on h3. He takes on h3 as well. I go king d6 here. Then he starts pushing the pawn. So once again, he can't go a4, he has to go 1 because he already moved it from a1. So in this variation, you can only go 2 from the starting square. In this case, a1. Then I go c5, he goes a4. I go king c6, attacking his rook. He goes rook b1. I go h4. He goes a5. I go c4. And at this point, I was just trying to stalemate, and I couldn't really see any way of doing that, really. After a6, there's king c5, then a7, and then c3 check. And once king takes, there's not really anything I can do. I go king d6 at this point. He makes a queen. I go king e6. He goes queen e8 check, king f5, queen f7 check, king g5, rook to g1 check. Then no matter where I go really, I go king h6 and he wins with queen g6 checkmate. Good game, Matt. What do you guys think of this variation? Leave your comments down below on what you guys think. Once again, feel free to subscribe to the channel to see more of these videos if you are interested in seeing how these play out. Next time, I'll try not to blunder on the very first move. See you guys in the next video.